Good evening and welcome to tonight's live stream where we are discussing fact from fiction when it comes to a lot of the general rules of thumb when it comes to your retirement and the planning of it. So we have with us Nicole Riney, Certified Financial Planner Professional, and Lizzie Krogh, Certified Financial Planner Professional. And we want to do a few things tonight. First, we want to discuss these, let's call them rules of thumb, things that you've heard over many, many years, preparing for retirement, reading different blogs, listening to people who talk about retirement. We want to discuss them, give you the considerations that you should consider, for lack of a better word, when it comes to these rules of thumb. And we're also going to take your questions. We want this to be interactive. We want this to be conversational. So we're going to discuss it ourselves. I'm going to be checking the comments over here. So we don't want to keep this limited to only the rules of thumb that we have developed for tonight's show. If there's something you've heard and you'd like us to discuss that, feel free to type it in the comments also. Second thing, we're going to be doing a raffle. So you have the opportunity to receive our Retirement Success Toolkit. So it's a really useful guide, covers a lot of different aspects of retirement, from Social Security, what to do if you've been laid off, market volatility, a lot of different retirement topics, all condensed into one toolkit. To receive this and have an opportunity to win a $100 gift card to your favorite restaurant, a QR code will pop up on your screen. Simply scan that, enter your information, receive the guide, and we're going to do a raffle 2 times tonight, one halfway through and then one at the end of tonight's live stream, where 2 lucky people will win a $100 gift card to their favorite restaurant. So
you don't have to split the gift card, though.
No, you do not have to split the gift card. It'll be 100 and 100.
Thank you. Just wanted to clarify in case people
unless
were
one of Nicole's clients wins, then.
What? That's not cool.
Okay, so we have Drewski in the lobby here. It says 12 people. My screen is actually very large. I do have my 45th birthday this week, and I think the team thinks that my vision has gone poor.
Here you go. You need to borrow.
I'm going to have to figure out how to shrink this in a few minutes. But Nicole, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing well.
Good.
You usually have 20 or 30 clients show up whenever you're on here. Did you send the email blast out to everyone?
I forgot the email, but I did, like, every meeting today. I'm like, I'll see you tonight. I'll see you tonight, right? Right? And so Juan is typically here. So hi, Juan. Hi, Sue. You better be here. Otherwise, you're going to make me look like a fool. But, yeah.
I think she tells the clients to get on here and help you so you guys
boost
can all
my
gang
numbers
up on me.
Yeah.
Lizzie, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing tonight?
Doing well.
Good.
So Lizzie has put the legwork in to do a lot of the prep work for tonight. Nicole and I, we just kind of show up and we're like, let's go. So here's what I'm going to start with first.
She's the smart one.
One that was not on your list, but it's something that we hear all the time when we're sitting with clients, and that is I should retire mortgage free. So most of our careers, people that we've sat with entering retirement, they've had mortgages at maybe 5%, 4%, 3%, 2%, maybe even less than that, people who got mortgages back in 06, 07. But I'll start with you, Nicole. What are, one, we're going to talk about utility tonight and how a lot of times black and white, the math isn't necessarily the appropriate thing for retirement and planning. Good. But when we talk about why people should or should not have a mortgage in retirement, before we kind of get into those considerations, is this something, I know for me in my career, when I was sitting with clients, I saw it all the time. People wanted no mortgage in retirement. So I guess talk to me a little bit about those conversations that you have.
Well, the first question I always ask is, what's your interest rate, right? Typically, most of the clients, if they're getting ready to retire, they've owned their home for a little while. So like Troy said, they probably have a pretty low interest rate. So, and then I point out, okay, so what can you get in a CD or what can you get in a high yield savings account? So they'll be like, I have a 2.5% mortgage. Oh, well, I'm getting 3-4% in my savings account. Okay, so why would we take it out where it's earning you money and put it somewhere where they're charging you money? Why not make the money for yourself? So it's more of a cash flow situation and kind of a where is the most efficient place to put it. So, that's kind of the first one. And the client goes, oh, yeah, I didn't think about it like that. I'm like, why don't you make money on your money before you give it to the bank?
Yeah, because just from a simple math problem, if your mortgage was $300,000 and it's, they say 3%, but you can invest it and make 4%.
Yeah.
Okay, so that 4% of my 300 grand is $12,000 of interest. I can then take 9,000 of it, if the mortgage was 3%, send that to the bank as an interest payment, and now I've pocketed that extra $3,000. So it's an arbitrage, is what we call it in the financial world, Lizzie. Obviously, you know that.
Arbitrage. Have you heard that word before?
Thank you, Troy, for the explanation.
You're welcome. So we're a team here. We try to help
she's
help
the
each other
smart
out.
one, Troy.
Why do you think it is, Lizzie, that so many people they do want to have that mortgage paid off? Is it because they've been told that, or they just don't like the payment? What do you?
Yeah, I think there's some misconceptions maybe of heading into retirement debt-free is the best way to set yourself up for success.
I wonder where they possibly could have gotten that notion.
It sounds like a myth.
Oh, zing.
And at some point, if clients tell me, hey, it's keeping me up at night, I just, especially, I can't imagine passing away, my spouse having to carry on this mortgage without me. For some reason, sometimes it just brings them peace of mind. And if I say, okay, if it's really keeping you up at night, then let's look at, paying it off maybe over a 2 or 3 year span to make them very tax efficient in paying it off. But most of the time, you guys are correct. Positive arbitrage tells us keeping your money invested in something that's safe and yielding you more percentage, more return, instead of paying down that low interest debt is typically, math-wise, that's what makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now especially from a more advanced planning concept with the we're calling it the bill, not the one big beautiful bill, just because the alliteration is a bit tough for me to
way too
consistently
hard.
get out. But with the fact that you could itemize and still receive the senior bonus deduction, and if you have high SALT taxes, so state and local taxes, so your property taxes, sales tax on large purchases, you can take that senior deduction. If you're married, it's $12,000 plus the SALT cap of $40,000. Then if you do have mortgage interest, you can actually add that interest on and increase the deduction even further to help offset income in retirement. So with the new legislation, it may make even more sense to carry the mortgage.
People will be like, yay, I paid off my mortgage. And then they go do their taxes and they're like, crap, where's all my deductions? I can't write anything off anymore. So yeah, that's also an important consideration. And tax rate, right? If you don't have that money sitting in cash and your plan is to pull it out of an IRA to pay off the house, well, now you got to consider potentially 20% in taxes first off the top. And then you're going to pay off your house. Plus what you're taking out of the market, you're losing market opportunity. So there's just a lot to consider. Every plan is different. There's no one right answer. And that's another big reason behind this whole myths topic today, is because these are, people take them as, this is fact, this is how I should plan my retirement, but it's so nuanced. It's so individualized.
And it does, like to your point, Lizzie, it does come down a lot of times to what makes you feel better, because many times over the course of my career, I've sat with the client and we go through the pros and cons and they say, okay, you know what, Troy, that makes sense. I'm not going to pay the mortgage off. And then I see them 3 months or 6 months later, and the first thing they bring up is, hey, should I pay off this mortgage? But one of the things that I found successful when working with people, you actually ask them to print off their principal and interest schedule. So if they've had the mortgage for 20, 25, 22 years, and you actually look at your allocation of dollars. So if, say your mortgage payment is $3,000 a month, you look at it later on in the mortgage, so much of that payment is actually going towards principal. It actually becomes a mechanism of saving to increase your net worth, because most of it is going into the equity of your home and such a small bit is interest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. The longer your mortgage goes, the more your money goes to the actual owning of the actual house instead of the interest. So definitely something to consider. I also think that people just breaking down, what am I actually paying interest, kind of a lost investment, so to speak, compared to actually buying my house and owning it outright. That it was really almost like a light bulb moment for folks.
Yeah. Before we move on, any kind of final thoughts here? Either of you?
Not really. I just challenge, if you are thinking debt-free going into retirement is what you should be doing, or kind of what the rule of thumb is, just sit down with a financial advisor and let's walk through the pros and cons. Math-wise, it might make sense. Math-wise, it might not make sense. But it is important to have that conversation before you just kind of make a rash decision, right? Let's talk through pros and cons and kind of see what makes best for your situation.
And it's that emotional component too, especially for, I have a lot of single female clients, and they just feel better knowing I own my house. Nobody can take my house away from me. And so you can't put a price tag on that. And so that still is an important consideration. But we're here to just kind of talk you through the pros and cons. Here's, what could happen. Here's, here's mathematically what's going to happen, but also making you feel better because it's your plan. We want you to feel good about your plan at the end of the day. It's your decision. It's your choice. But oftentimes, like we said, you're done paying interest by the last few years, or you're paying very minimal interest. So it doesn't really make sense to rush to pay that off in most cases, unless it just makes you feel good.
Mm-hmm. So this, my last thought, and it's going to kind of tie in. So Craig Marshall here asks, what's a realistic return on your money without much risk? I have $1 million in cash, 600 in a 401k, 58, want to retire in 1 year, no bills, house is paid, and no spouse. So when, Craig, thank you very much. We're going to address your question in a second. And ultimately it's how much can I reasonably expect to earn without a lot of risk? I want to bring that conversation back to what is the purpose of your money? What are you trying to accomplish? Because the last thing on this mortgage thing, do we pay it off or not? Your risk willingness, it comes into play here, because even if you're a conservative investor and you invest in CDs like we talked about, it still probably makes sense mathematically to not pay the mortgage off, because you can earn a higher rate in safe, low risk investments than your mortgage rate is today, than your mortgage typically is for most of the people that we sit with. But if you're willing to take more risk, and then the second component, your time horizon, if those funds that you're considering paying off the mortgage aren't needed for the next 1, 2, 3 years, and you do have a higher willingness to take risk, well, now that arbitrage component is much larger, because you may be able to earn 15, 20%, maybe 7, 8%, whatever the market does over the next 1, 2, 3 years. So now the opportunity cost of that decision becomes much greater. And this is the same thing. This is why I'm segueing into your question, Craig, because first and foremost, what I hear you saying is, when you say without much risk, what's a realistic return on your money? So as an advisor, what I hear is, I'm not willing to see my accounts go down. So what is the amount of money that I could potentially earn and not see my accounts drop? Probably, for some people, when I hear that, it might be 2 or 3%, like they really don't want it to go down. Other people, maybe 5%, 7% would be their max willingness. So that's what I would hear. And you guys would agree, you hear the same thing when someone says that. So what I would typically recommend that you do is, let's carve out a purpose for your money. So you say, so no spouse, no bills. I don't know if you have kids, but what are your hobbies? Like, what are some of the things that you want to do in retirement? And let's figure those things out first. And then we can kind of start to look at, not looking at the 1.6 million as one large bucket. We can start to segment some of those funds out to where maybe the majority of it is spread across a couple of different buckets here, and they're minimal risk. And realistically, in today's environment, you can make 4 to 7% without a ton of risk. Now, when interest rates go down and the landscape changes, that very well could change as well. So actually taking some action now while interest rates are still higher most likely would behoove you. But then understanding, with money that you'll never need, once you have a plan and you have income figured out, you have healthcare expenses, because if you're not married, you're going to need someone to take care of you later in life. Let's plan for those things. Let's find a purpose for your money. Let's segment it into different strategies or buckets based on different time horizons and purposes. And then let's create a plan. So that's, Lizzie, that's what the retirement success plan is, right?
Yeah, exactly. Largely what you're talking about, Troy, is undue risk, right? let's not take on too much risk that we need to be successful. But, working with financial advisors in our firm specifically, how much of this money do we need to use now? How much do we need to slate for, 5 to 6 years down the road? And how much do we need to slate for the long term, right? This gentleman sounds pretty young, so risk management and mitigating sequence of returns risk is really probably one of his biggest risks in his financial plan. That's really kind of the benefit of working with someone like Nicole and I is we think about risk management all day long, right? That's what we do for our clients. So yeah, it sounds like that gentleman could probably use a consultation from one of us, it sounds like. But yeah, he's spot on, right? You don't want to take on more risks than what you need to have to, or that you have to be successful, right?
There is I'm going back to old school. If anyone's seen Third Rock from the Sun, a fabulous show. But I just remember this episode. I scoured YouTube, couldn't find it. If any of you find it, email it to me. But there's a scene where they're learning about investing. And so Tommy, the kid, has a basket of eggs, and he's like, and Harry, is that the guy's name? Dick. He's like, well, let's just put all the eggs in that basket. That sounds like a great idea. And Harry goes, yeah, but what if it's not? What if this basket falls and everything breaks or whatever? And he's like, yeah, but it won't. Just keep doing it. And he goes, but what if it does? But it won't. But what if it does? But it won't. And then he goes, but what if it does? And then Dick finally goes, oh. And so I find I do that with my clients constantly where they're like, no, we're going to get 7% return, 10% return. I'm like, but what if we don't? And that's my job, is to take care of those years that we don't anticipate and make sure your plan is still going to work.
Hey, Nicole, I was just curious, if we can find an investment that can get somebody, 8 to 10% each year, we'd be on a beach right now having cocktails, right?
Or
we wouldn't have to be here.
With no risk.
Yeah, exactly. With 0% risk. Yeah.
So first we have a few
and
people
we'd be
here.
investigated by the SEC.
So just a guy. I just want to say hello. He says, my plan should break most of the rules of thumb.
Good for you.
Interesting.
Cindy Kemwright. She says, happy birthday. Whose birthday is it?
Yours.
Oh, well, it's actually not today, Cindy, but thank you very much. It is this week, I believe, 27th.
You'd
so
think after 45 years you'd remember the day your birthday is.
Today's the 22nd, so it's coming up this week, so thank you. Stumped me there. Well, I got confused because it's Steve, our chief marketing officer. It's his actual birthday today,
That's
so
right.
I told him happy birthday. So, Cindy, I was trying to connect the dots. How do you know Steve? And so, anyways, Fast Eddie, I'm glad you are here. Scott from Pearland, thanks for joining us. Everyone else. So, Craig, hopefully that was a little bit helpful. I mean, realistically, for your money right now in this environment, because interest rates are higher, and when interest rates are higher, you can earn more, and you can lock in today's interest rates for even longer periods of time with certain types of strategies and investments. So being proactive now is probably in your best interest if you're a low-risk person. If you're someone who's willing to take on risk in your portfolio, interest rates coming down typically would benefit you because the cost of money goes down, and historically the stock market tends to go up, at least in the short term, as interest rates come down. So there's a lot of considerations there, but I think the most important thing that we do is we bring it back to identifying what do you want to accomplish with your money, what is the purpose, and then starting to build a little bit of a plan around that. Okay, so Fast Eddie says, someone says, maybe it wasn't Fast Eddie. I have to scroll here because the screen is so large. Someone said
First
no
world
one,
problems.
Someone, I think it may have been Fast Eddie, maybe not. But nobody uses the interest deduction anymore. And so
because itemizing so hard.
Yeah, so here's the thing. So while, yes, that is correct for a lot of people, with the passage of this new legislation, it is going to be much more likely that you will begin to itemize again, especially if you own a property that has large property taxes. And to receive that senior bonus deduction, you're not excluded from or precluded from using it just because you itemize. So you do have, if you have high state and local income taxes, especially if you're under the age of 65, because there are some additional bonuses above the age of 65, like the senior bonus, and then the I guess, what's the other one called? Just a bonus deduction?
Well, it's the enhanced senior deduction.
And then the other one, just the one that was here before.
And then they just...
what is it?
Oh, it's
3,600 and 2,000, just a bonus deduction.
Yeah, it's increased to
they
the
just
standard
increased
deduction.
the standard deduction.
Right.
So if you're over 65, you need a lot of
Write-offs.
deductions to really make it worth your while, because the standard deduction, then the bonus standard deduction, and then the extra bonus standard deduction if you're
The
over the age of
bonus
65.
standard
And if you're
deduction.
married, it gets up to what, 47,000, I believe. So you would need more than that to actually itemize. But if you're younger than 65, it does become a bit more attractive. And especially if you live in a state where you have high property bills, high local sales tax, or just a year where you made a lot of purchases and you have a lot of sales tax. Maybe you bought a new car or 2 new cars, or
We
a
have
boat.
clients that will double it up in 1 year and do deductions or itemize every other year, where they'll be super charitable. They'll double up on their property taxes all in 1 year so that they can take advantage of itemizing and getting full credit for their mortgage interest paid, versus trying to do it every year. And now you have a much higher bar to try to hit. And it just becomes harder to itemize at that point.
Yeah. So if you're going to make payments in December and January, you can do them all in December. If you're going to make charitable contributions, instead of doing them all in 2 separate years, say you want to do 10,000 and 10,000, you bunch them up in December, and then you do 20,000 plus your property taxes, mortgage interest, and other to itemize. So
I've even had clients who've tried to bunch up itemized deductions around some health events, right? Because you can also write off some medical expenses under the itemized deduction schedule. Medical expenses, the state and local tax deduction, mortgage interest, and then also those charitable contributions too. If we can kind of bunch those in a year, it can just be really advantageous for people.
okay, guys. So Mike Davis says he needs a nickname like Fast Eddie. I agree.
He made his own nickname.
Jeep, first time here from Idaho. Thanks for joining, man. Okay, so let's go to the 60/40 portfolio, okay? Because this kind of ties into Craig's question as well, because a general rule of thumb, I share the story at live events. I've done it on YouTube before. A long time ago, we had someone come in, and he was asked if he was high risk, medium risk, or low risk. And he told the advisor he was medium risk. He lost a whole bunch of money, and then he sold everything in one of the market crashes. And he came in to see us after the fact, and he said, Troy, how did I end up in such an aggressive portfolio? I told the advisor I was a medium risk person. Well, the fact of the matter is, if you ask 3 or 4 different people what medium risk is to them, one, it might be 5 or 10% loss, another it might be 10 or 20% loss. So everyone's going to have a different range of their willingness to see the portfolio fluctuate, with a very vague, kind of opaque question like, are you high, medium, or low? But a lot of people still end up in a 60/40 portfolio. So if you tell your advisor you're medium risk, chances are pretty good, without any further deep dive, you're going to end up in a 60/40 portfolio. And while first, for the past 3 years or so, the 60/40 portfolio has done really, really poorly. But when we look at the portfolio in general, I think I tend to see that it may be more aggressive for people than a lot of them are willing to actually see their portfolios fluctuate, because that portfolio could still easily lose 10, 15, 20, 25%. And that's way beyond the comfort level for a lot of people. So
Yeah. Especially in those high drawdown years, right? Before we've started Social Security, before maybe there's a pension income that's starting, you're reliant more on your portfolio performance. And if it's not performing, you're losing money faster than you
those are
can count.
the gap years before you turn Social Security on and you retire. You have that gap to where you may have to withdraw more from your portfolio to live the life that you want to. Then, of course, once Social Security turns on, you can lessen that because of the income.
Right. That's where, most folks hit sequence of returns risk, right? We're drawing more on our portfolio those first couple of years before we hit Social Security age. So we just can't take the risk of having more of a hit or a loss. So, what Nicole and I and all of the planners here at Oak Harvest do is we really talk about not only how much risk are you taking or how much risk are you comfortable taking, but also what safeguards can we put into place? What levers can we pull, if you will?
Cash
if
flow
the market,
management.
right, if the market doesn't perform like we want it to, because there will be years where the market won't perform how we want it to. So just like Troy was saying, those gap years, it is really important that we have some levers to pull to mitigate that sequence of returns risk. Mitigate, hey, I'm pulling on my portfolio 7 or 8% for income these first 2 years. What can I do in order to shield myself from that sequence of returns risk those first couple of years until our Social Security turns on, or maybe a pension, right? All of those other retirement income streams that can come in and alleviate the pressure from your portfolio.
Yeah, and a lot of what you're talking about is the different investment types that we use, the different investment strategies. Fixed indexed annuities, for one, are basically insurance against market loss, right? You cannot lose whatever you put into that fixed indexed annuity due to market volatility. But it's just a tool, right? And I thought of a new. You want to hear my new?
Sure.
Okay, here we go. It's actually tools, though, because I was thinking about this, and people do say, I don't like annuities, whatever. Okay, it's just a tool. When you think about it like a tool, maybe it's a hammer in your toolbox, and you're like, yeah, but I don't like hammers. But what if you have a nail? You need a hammer. Just because you don't like it doesn't mean you don't need it, right? So there is some of that kind of thought process behind why and how we develop some of our portfolios around your risk tolerance and around your cash flow needs. There's a purpose behind that, a direct purpose behind that. We're not just throwing things into a bucket and saying, maybe we'll need these tools someday. No, we're deliberately choosing the tools that we think we're going to need to fulfill your goals.
So, okay, not part of the agenda, but let's tackle this myth. Annuities are bad.
Yeah.
Right? So you have different types of annuities.
We just went off script.
Yeah, we went off script here. So hold on. So you have variable annuities. You have fixed annuities. Someone told me this a long time ago. I think it was maybe in a book called, I think Patrick Kelly is the name of the author. I think it was Power of Zero or something like that. But he uses an analogy in there. And for those people who always hate annuities, typically it's the variable annuities that are higher in fees, that can lose a lot of money.
No protection.
A lot of people don't understand the different types. So Patrick Kelly in his book uses a great example. So if you just simply educated someone about the tool itself and they didn't know about the word annuity, a very, very, very large percentage of people would be like, you know what, that actually sounds pretty good for my retirement. And here's the story that he used. So if you went to Las Vegas and you were playing blackjack, and every time you bet $100 and won, you would get $50 in return. So half of what you bet. And then every time you bet $100 and lost, you just simply got to keep your $100. The dealer didn't take your money. If that table existed in Las Vegas,
I would never leave it.
The question is not would you leave it, is would you ever get an opportunity to play, because the line would be so long that you'd never have an opportunity. So in its most basic form, that's what a fixed indexed annuity is. Now, are they appropriate for everyone? No tool is appropriate for everyone.
Right.
But when you confuse variable annuities that are high in risk, typically much higher in annual fees, and the benefits from an income standpoint simply aren't
and preservation.
Competitive.
Yeah.
But when you're in retirement, it's more about that capital preservation. So that's a big one. And I always remember that concept when I talk to somebody about that particular tool, because if you just understood the benefits and took that word out of the equation, I don't think there's many people who'd say, you know what, if I got $1 million, 100, 200,000 of my money in something that's protected from market loss, and I still can have the opportunity to earn 5, 6, 7% a year. I don't think many people would say I don't want that as part of my retirement, because again, they're also the only tool that if you have large health expenses later in life or something unexpected happens, you can turn that money into a guaranteed lifetime income stream. And you can't do that with stocks or bonds or mutual funds or CDs. And they're backed by the claims paying ability of the life insurance carrier, which has dollar for dollar legal reserve, which has state oversight, which has tremendous audits, checks, and balances So compared to banks, compared to brokerage firms, they're far more scrutinized from a regulatory standpoint, and they're far more capital intense. They have far more reserves. So, but no, they're not appropriate for everyone, and you shouldn't have 100% of your money or 80 or 90 or 70 or for most people, not even 50 or 60. But a lot of people, it makes sense to have some type of component or tool that offers some principal preservation.
Especially in retirement. Right. I wouldn't recommend this to some 30-year-old or some 40-year-old that's still trying to build wealth. Right. It's a preservation tool. It's how we typically tend to use it. So,
yeah, and the power of the annuity too really comes in, and what if we do suffer another 08, or what if we do suffer an extended 2020, right? Instead of us selling our assets in the market at a severe loss, why not use that annuity and create income from something that's principally protected instead of selling your assets at a loss? Right? It's just such a great tool to have in your back pocket to say, if the worst comes to the worst, I have 30% in this protected asset and I'm going to use it, right? It's going to be there to protect me if kind of everything goes kapunk, it's peace of mind for me to have it as a planner, to be honest with you.
A lot of people don't realize, though, that annuities have liquidity provisions.
Absolutely.
So I think part of the myth around annuities is that, well, if I put my money there, it's gone, the insurance company keeps it, I can never access it again. Or if I die, there's nothing for my heirs.
Yeah, they keep it.
Yeah, and it couldn't be further from the truth when you're talking about the fixed annuity, the fixed indexed annuity. So I look at it, the liquidity provisions as kind of a double-edged sword, right? Typically, you're going to be limited to 10% per year. So if you need to access from any account more than 10%, then a fixed indexed annuity is not appropriate for you for that money. But that's pretty standard across the industry, where you can access about 10% of that account value every single year. And then after that surrender charge period is over, which the surrender charges can be pretty big. So this is very important to not put more money in. But the fact that the myth exists that once I put my money into that fixed annuity, that I can never touch it again, that if I die, I lose it.
Never going to get it back. Yeah.
I think that is one of the, kind of big myths that just leave a bad taste in people's mouth because they don't truly understand the facts from the fiction.
Yeah, the annuity industry, unfortunately, has a lot of bad actors, right? When I meet with clients and I tell them about this tool, I often say the annuity industry breeds almost like a used car dealership vibe, right? So it's really important that you work with a fiduciary, but I try to break a lot of myths in our conversations, right? You have access to 10% per year. If you were to pass away, your spouse has options. Typically, they can keep the money with the company and then continue the product, or they can take the money out as long as the company has proof of death. It really is a very flexible tool, and I feel like that's kind of one of the biggest parts of my job is to educate people on how is this such a great tool. Not for all of your assets, like you said, Troy, because some of it is illiquid, right? You're only limited to a certain percentage per contract year that you can take out. So, we're not sticking 100% of your funds in there. That wouldn't be the fiduciary thing to do. We wouldn't be working in your best interest, but a portion of your assets, protecting them from market downfall, but allowing them to grow with the market over time. It's just such a powerful tool and something that I think really brings our clients a lot of peace of mind in the long run.
So we have our first raffle winner coming up in just 1 minute here. Last thing, and we'll kind of move on from this, is just some of the downsides, some of the considerations, because again, they're not appropriate for everyone. So the used car salesman vibe that you kind of put off, that's because annuities pay commissions. Right? So if when you buy an annuity, typically the person who sells it to you is going to make a commission somewhere around 5%, 6%, 7%. And some products and companies will make that percentage even higher. So you have kind of some fly-by-night people who come into the industry and they're just trying to hit these quick sales and they're trying to make a lot of money.
And then they peace out.
And then you never see them again.
We get so many clients that say, I bought this annuity from this guy. I never heard from him again. That's where we really are different. We are here year after year. We are going through that statement with you, making sure you understand it, the purpose of it in your plan.
And the commissions from in the annuity world, they're paid by the insurance company, so they don't come out of people's money. But there's still a large incentive there up front for bad actors to come in and potentially make a lot of money up front. And part of that has contributed, I think, to some of the negative connotation around annuities, because the product is misunderstood, as we just went through, but there's been a lot of people who have been sold something that was inappropriate for them.
Correct.
And they do have those surrender charges, because that's the second big thing. So annuities have typically a 10-year surrender charge schedule. Today, you have some actually decent products out there that are 5 years or maybe 7 years. But if you pull out more than 10% per year, let's say in year 2, all of your money, you may get hit with a 7%, 8%, maybe even a 9% fee. Now, that's probably less than you would lose in a stock market correction, but still, it's a big fee. And if you pull out more than that 10%, you're going to get hit with it in the first year or two. So that's another downside. That's another reason why if you need your money, it doesn't make sense for you. But if you have a portion that you don't need for some time and you want safety, protection, the opportunity to turn that into a guaranteed lifetime income, it's important to understand those considerations so you can make a good decision regarding your money, what's best for you and your retirement. So, okay. Our first winner of tonight's raffle. So we're going to do 2 of these tonight. But the first winner is Rick Hansen. So, Rick, congratulations on
Congrats, Rick.
being the first winner of tonight's raffle.
Rick and Jen.
We are, is your client? Yes.
No.
No.
Lizzie said she'd slap me if my clients won, so I don't want to get slapped. It's my clients are
Where
the
are my
best.
clients? I'll rig the next one. No,
I'm
just
curious
kidding.
about where you're going to go. Email me.
So our marketing team will reach out, $100 gift card to your favorite restaurant. And we're going to do one more raffle at the end of tonight's live stream, which should be in about 30 minutes or so. Just kind of seeing how the questions are going. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next kind of myth, fact from fiction. I'm going to toss it over to you guys, let you discuss it. I'm going to go through some of the comments here. So here's one that I've been very vocal about for many, many years, because when you work with people in retirement and you see them through a plan, you see that most people aren't spending as much as they otherwise could a lot of times. Now, that may be based out of fear. It may be based out of many different reasons, but the 4% rule. So, Lizzie, I'm going to toss it to you first. As all of these myths, the 4% rule may very well be appropriate for you, but it may very well not be on both sides of the coin, right? Like, you may be able to spend more, but if you're very aggressive, maybe you should spend a little bit less. So, what do you...
Talk a little bit about what it is, because I've brought it up in meetings, and the clients were like, what's the 4% rule? So,
good point.
Yeah, so the 4% rule, pretty well-known, I guess, rule of thumb, but essentially,
some people don't know.
Except for
Not that
Nicole's,
you're dumb if you haven't heard of the 4%
no.
rule. Thanks,
This is-
Lizzie.
This
Thanks.
is a great conversation starter, because the 4% rule means as long as you live off of 4% of your retirement investments, so
portfolio.
IRA, brokerage, whatever you have saved up and earmarked for retirement, as long as you live off 4% of those cumulative assets, you should be safe in retirement, meaning you won't outlive your assets, so to speak. I think Nicole and I both, when we work with clients, we definitely see typically a higher than 4% rule in the first 2 or 3 years of retirement, right? Mainly because deferring Social Security, getting folks to full retirement age to take that Social Security, that just typically increases your portfolio withdrawal your portfolio withdrawal for those first couple years of retirement. Now, once your income streams kick on, so Social Security for, assuming we're talking about a couple, Social Security for husband, Social Security for wife, once those kick on, we typically see that portfolio withdrawal rule sink down pretty low. I mean,
rate.
sometimes,
Yeah.
the rate, right?
Yeah.
To 2%. I've even seen it as low as 1%, depending on where Social Security falls for the couple. So it
goes negative. Often.
It's definitely it's a good kind of rule to get you in the idea of I would say pre-planning for retirement, like somebody who's maybe 40, early 50s. But as we get closer to retirement, it's really important for you to sit down with a financial planner and say, okay, I am going to be higher than that 4% rule, right? Those first couple of years. What do I need to do? How do I need to create my portfolio or invest my portfolio in order to take in account that extra risk, so to speak?
Yeah. So we want to look at it. And typically the way we build our plans is we want to make sure you're never going to run out of money in retirement, right? And as close as we can. And so we try to make sure the back half is stable. So that gives you the freedom to spend more in the front half so that you can, travel more, or you can buy your grandkids more toys, or you can start college funds in these early years, because it's going to take time to grow and come to fruition. And so, oftentimes we do see a bigger drawdown in those first few years. And plus, spending alone in retirement is typically higher in the first 3 to 5 years of retirement, because you're buying stuff to get ready to retire. You're buying the RV, you're taking those big trips you've been putting off for years. You're buying new vehicles that you're hoping will last forever for the rest of retirement. But so there's higher spending. So I often tell my clients, don't worry about it. Don't beat yourself up. I know you're spending more now than usual. It's fine. Because typically we do see it taper off and kind of trail out. And so we're not spending as much anyways, which also leads to a reduction in the percentage of your portfolio that you're withdrawing. And so if you're maintaining 8% for like a decade, that's probably not very good, an 8% withdrawal rate. But in the first few years, if it's a little high, we're good, because typically in the back end, we're making money because we've planned it that way.
So I'm listening, and everything you guys are saying is completely accurate, but just all these different dots are kind of being connected in my brain. So one, risk willingness in the portfolio. How is it invested? So if you have a more aggressive portfolio and the market performs poorly, you have to be willing to tighten the belt. So if you are pulling out larger withdrawals in those earlier years, especially if you don't have a plan for the back end, any type of strategy to, let's call it insurance for the back end, or something set aside to be there for you. If you're too aggressive and you lose in the beginning years and you're making large withdrawals, that's the sequence of returns that Lizzie brought up. That can absolutely devastate your retirement. So you need a plan in this scenario. But to your point with Social Security, I think most people don't quite understand how much Social Security, one, is going to provide on an ongoing basis when you look at the cost of living adjustment. So when we extrapolate this out and we're looking at a plan, as Social Security increases more and more, all things considered, you typically have to withdraw a little bit less from your portfolio as you age, because one, you are spending less as you get into those slow go years and to the no go years. But Social Security, depending on what the government inflation rate is, it very well could be increasing at 3, 4, 5%. So if your spending rate is growing at a lesser rate than the COLA for your Social Security, you have an expanding kind of marginal growth there in your income. So just in general with Social Security, people underestimate how much they're going to receive. So a lot of times in live events, I'll give this example. Husband and wife, if you just have $50,000 of Social Security, so $35,000, let's say for the husband, $15,000 for the wife.
Let's say $35,000 for the wife and $15,000 for the husband.
We can do that.
Thank you.
That's $50,000 a year. So no cost of living adjustment. If you simply live a 20-year retirement, that's $1 million from Social Security. Now, you do get a cost of living adjustment. That math actually works out to closer to 1.2, 1.25, 1.3 based on historical COLAs. But let's say both spouses worked and had almost full Social Security at their full retirement age. Okay, now you're looking at significantly more income than $50,000 a year from Social Security. So now that cost of living adjustment, it's compounding on a higher and higher number, especially if you defer it from 67 to 70 or 68 to 69, which this is now a perfect segue into our next rule of thumb, always defer Social Security. But point being is Social Security is a huge component of your retirement income plan. And when you look at everything in totality, not in an isolated let's call it a silo of how should I make these decisions. Oftentimes let me clarify this. So your willingness to take risk, how the money is invested, what's your Social Security strategy. When you're looking at those things together, now the third component is your withdrawal rate. And it's not just a static withdrawal rate over time. It's many people are going to be more active from 64 to 73. Okay, that's your go-go period. Maybe for you, it's 60 to 70. I don't know. Point being is you have a more active
For
period.
me, it's 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. That's it. And
That's your go-go
then I start
period?
going down after that.
So that's your slow go, and then the no-go.
My
Okay.
slow go is after 3.
Your no-go is just what, like
My
6
no-go is
o'clock?
after, yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
But when you look at those, this is what we talk about all the time. This is, we all of these pieces of retirement are connected. So Social Security strategy, your withdrawal rate, how you invest the portfolio, your risk willingness, all these things are connected, and they dictate, really those two, your willingness to take risk and your Social Security election strategy, dictate the withdrawal rate more so than anything, I would probably say.
Yeah, absolutely. And ideally, we can count on the market to provide us with the amount of return we need to meet our income goals and delay Social Security. But sometimes that's not the case, right? That's why, whenever I meet with clients and they say, when should I take Social Security? And I said, well, here's what we're going to target, but I don't know what the future has on hold for us, right? But when you look at Social Security, increases 8% per year plus cost of living on adjustment on top of that. If we had access to an investment like that, we would all be putting our money into it, right? So delaying that Social Security is typically a good strategy if we can manage it. Now, that's a general rule, right? You bring in some of these other factors, maybe you're a cancer survivor, or maybe you don't have longevity in your family. Well, then maybe it doesn't make sense to delay Social Security just because of life expectancy, right? Nicole and I always joke, with our clients when they ask us this question, well, if you can tell us the exact day you plan on passing away, we can do the exact math to tell you when to take Social Security to the day, right? But we have to, make our best recommendations, but, fully understand the person behind the strategy and the couple behind the strategy and what makes sense for them individually.
And be honest with your advisor, especially when it comes to Social Security. I've had a few clients that were dealing with health issues that they didn't tell me about. And so we were delaying Social Security. And by the time we just said, let's go ahead. It looks like the time is right. Let's turn that on. She went into the hospital 3 weeks later, was never able to cash her first Social Security check. So that just breaks my heart. I'm like, had I known. She just never said anything. Every time we sat down, she never mentioned anything about her health. And so I am so happy when clients do say, and I have another client who's like, my dad died young, my little brother's already died, my sister's got heart problems, I've got heart problems, I'm taking it. I don't care what you say, Nicole, I'm taking my Social Security. And I'm like, I'm not going to fight you over it. It's your life. You take your Social Security, because that emotional component, again, is very, very important. So
that kind of really starts to cover the myth that you should always defer your Social Security until age 70. Real quick, before we kind of get into some of the considerations, because many of you should defer until 70 and many of you should not. Real quick, I just saw Hayden Bourne. How you doing, Hayden? It just simply says, where does a Monte Carlo simulation fit into this, and what scores do you typically recommend? So
hundreds.
A Monte Carlo simulation, for those who aren't familiar with it, is just running a bunch of different simulations of potential investment returns. Now, some firms run Monte Carlos based on historical stock market performance. So they'll look from like 1950 to 1990. They'll cherry pick a period. And then they will retroactively apply that over a bunch of different scenarios. Sometimes with a daily rolling return, sometimes with average monthly returns. So the rules of the Monte Carlo simulation that you're using really, really matters. So what I like to do when it comes to a Monte Carlo is we use a system to where it will just randomly generate returns over the next X amount of years and do 1,000 simulations. So we're not using past performance in the stock market to generate any type of predictable outcome for the future, just randomly generating +6, +20, -13, -15. That's one set, okay? But extrapolated out over a 25, 30-year period, and then just randomly generating another sequence of returns. And then you can get more granular with the software and actually look at the performance of the portfolio and plan at different levels of spending, many different variables in these different simulations. So that's the number one thing, because I know a lot of big firms out there use Monte Carlos that are, in my opinion, rigged from the beginning. Not mentioning any names, obviously, but understand the rules of the Monte Carlo simulations that you're using. So on top of that, what was the actual question here, Hayden? What type of scores do we recommend? So these are dynamic. Like, we have seen Monte Carlo plans 1 year be a 92, and then we come back for the review based on either, market performance or withdrawals or things that have come up that were unexpected. They change pretty drastically. So understanding that score is nothing more than a snapshot in time. It's not a Bible. It's not, the rule of law. It's just simply a snapshot. And it's a probability of all those simulations, but it can change. And this is why relationships are so important in being able to look at this on an ongoing basis. So I don't want to stay too much on that one topic, but anything to kind of add there?
No, it's an important tool to use in a financial plan, right? It always kind of gives you an idea of, hey, where is my plan at? But just because your Monte Carlo is lower than what we recommend, we still do have kind of tools and resources we can use to increase that probability of success, right? Creating some type of secure income stream in the insurance industry. There's lots of ways that we can boost that probability of success, but it's not the end all be all, right?
And it's not a game. We're not trying to win. It's not about who has the highest score, right? And if we change a variable, like I'll be with a client, it'll be 99%. Awesome. Love it. They love to see that. Everybody loves to see 99%. We'll add, a little 10,000 more to your go-go years. Oh, now we're at 97%. I've had clients be like, like, that's 3% difference over the next 30, 40 years. That's a statistical, what's not anomaly? Is that the word I want?
Yeah.
It's not important,
yeah,
right? So
not statistically significant.
What he said.
Well, the other thing, too, when we look at those type of Monte Carlo simulations as well, our program, at least, I don't know what other folks do, but our program isn't including, potentially selling your house or downsizing, right? Which lots of folks want to do in retirement, moving into a retirement home, moving in, somewhere else. So when you look at that probability of success, it's just a snapshot to what's happening right now. But what happens in 15 or 20 years when you want to downsize, right?
Well, this is our dream, but dreams don't always come true.
But that's where I love the what if analysis, right? So you guys can sit down with clients and, they say, Lizzie, I'm thinking about selling my home. I have a mortgage of $300,000. I can sell it for $600 after commissions and fees and all that. I think I'm going to walk away with $285. Okay, but I think I might sell it in 3 years, 5 years, or 7 years. Okay, and I'm thinking about taking Social Security at 65 or maybe 67, possibly 70. What I love about what we do from a planning standpoint is we can create all these different scenarios, selling the home in these different years, taking Social Security in these different times on those different years, and then just right there on the review appointment with the client, run the Monte Carlo for all of those different decisions. And all it is a piece of additional information that we have to use our human experience, expertise, and skills as investment advisors and certified financial planner professionals to bring all that to bear to help our clients make the best decision we possibly can at that moment. But these are future planning items that are going to occur. They're not occurring today. So guess what we're going to do? We're going to look at it again in 6 months, again in 12 months. And then once that decision day is actually here and you're selling the home, okay, we have these years of conversations that we've had, the confidence level for that client, it's really, really high because they've analyzed it and looked at it from every different way. through multiple conversations over the past couple, 2, 3, 4 years, whatever in this example, it helps them just be confident with that decision.
Yeah, I have a client that called me, earlier this week and said they're expecting their second grandchild. Hey, Ken and Leanne, I hope you're tuning in tonight. But said, we just really want an acreage for our grandkids to be able to go and play. We know this wasn't part of the plan, but we'd like to buy this lot. In 2 to 3 years, we'd like to sell our home and build a nice house on this nice 1 acreage piece of land. And those are all scenarios, dynamic scenarios, right, that I can pop into our planning tools and start to kind of build out for them that gives them the confidence of, okay, we can actually fiscally afford to do this, right? This is our dream, but we don't know how the numbers are going to lay out. Yeah. And so just having that conversation, walking them through the planning tool and letting them know, everything looks great. It is a shift in the plan, but it's going to make you folks happy. It's going to make your retirement more successful, and we have the ability to do that for clients. I think it's very powerful to use those what if scenarios for maybe I do want to sell my house, maybe I do want to move to Florida, maybe I want to live on the beach for a while. Right? All of those scenarios we can start to build out to give you the confidence that, oh my gosh, that is actually something I can do in my life.
Yeah. And so when you brought up, clients are worried about how much they can spend. And I see clients all the time where like their account values just going up and up and up, but their spending needs are going down and down and down. I will sit there and say, okay, where are we going next? What new car are we going to get? And I try to, get a feel for what are your hobbies? How can we spend this? How can you enjoy your life? Go take your grandkids somewhere. Go do something. And I find myself more often than not encouraging my clients to spend more, right? You made this money. You had a plan for it. You worked so hard for it. Now's the time to enjoy it. And being able to see that plan and see that Monte Carlo score and envision, oh, okay, year after year, this is how it could play out. And that's why we update it at least every 6 months to a year whenever you come in, so that you still feel confident and you still feel like I can go book that cruise to Antarctica, whatever it is you want to do.
Okay, so we're going to rapid fire some of these myths, fact and fiction here in a few minutes. Just want to remind you that we have one more raffle upcoming for a $100 gift card to your favorite restaurant. So you'll see a QR code throughout tonight's live stream pop up on your screen. You have the opportunity to register for our retirement toolkit. It's a series of guides that help you with tax planning, with Social Security, many different aspects of retirement. So you still have an opportunity to register for that. We're going to do that in about 5 or 6 minutes. So make sure to sign up for that for the opportunity to win.
Mike, sign up now.
Okay, so real quick, and then I want to move on to Roth conversions and then talk a little bit about medical expenses, long-term care, some of these other things that we hear in retirement. So real quick, what are some of the benefits of actually deferring your Social Security? And I should start just by summarizing. So what we originally said was you hear that you should always defer your Social Security until 70. And of course, that's a myth. There's nothing that you should always do. For many of you, it makes sense to take it earlier, whether that's because you don't have the longevity, whether the way you invest your money, a lot of times people just simply feel more comfortable, therefore they can spend more in retirement when they have that Social Security coming in, as opposed to pulling from savings. So there's a lot of different reasons there. It may very well make sense for you to take it earlier. But what are some of the reasons to actually defer Social Security? And then let's move on to taxes and some long-term care.
Well, I was going to say taxes. So it's also part of a broader tax-efficient income strategy. And that's a very important part of it because that is tax-free income if you play your cards right. But if you have all these other types of income or required minimum distributions on top of that Social Security, now more of it's going to be taxable. So it's part of that overall strategy. You can't look at anything in a silo, like you were saying. So we have to look at it from all different angles.
By deferring it, you have the opportunity to do more tax planning, more Roth conversions.
You're
to
getting
create
that
a larger
guaranteed 8% growth
stream of tax deferred or tax-free income later in life. Because Social Security, preferentially treated, very well could be tax-free, depending on what other sources of income you have in retirement.
Yeah, the other thing is if you do have history of longevity in your family, delaying Social Security till age 70 is one of the biggest ways to mitigate longevity in your retirement, which is a huge risk, right?
I thought of another one.
So that is, if somebody tells me, hey, my grandmother lived to 101, my mom's doing well, she's living on her own at age 90, let's delay your Social Security because it's growing by 8% per year. You get cost of living adjustments. It is a great way to mitigate outliving your money. So
It's a guaranteed lifetime income stream.
Yeah.
absolutely.
And if you are married, it's a great survivor benefit to at least defer the larger of the two checks as long as you possibly can, so that if something happens to one of you, you get a larger survivor benefit or the higher check for a longer period. So,
Absolutely.
So we've been talking about Roth conversions for, I feel like 10, 12 years here, helping our clients do them. We've done tens of millions of dollars of conversions. And I've seen more and more people pick it up. I've seen more and more people, not that we invented the Roth conversion by any means,
shut up.
but as I would say kind of a leading voice in the industry about, whether through the YouTube channel or just in general with clients, about the long-term tax benefits of Roth conversions for your retirement. I've seen it over the past few years picked up by a lot of firms, and I've hear people even now saying everyone should do Roth conversions. It's everyone should do it. That's not necessarily true, right? There's a lot of situations where Roth conversions do not make sense for you based on your situation. So I know a little bit off script. This was not on what Lizzie prepared for us, but
Oh no,
it's a good one.
we know what happened last time.
You want to tackle this one?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think Roth conversions, for the most part, they make sense for most folks, but it's very hard to do Roth conversions in a single bracket. I mean, if you have, a single lady or a single man, I mean, the single tax bracket is just so much more penalizing. That can be really challenging.
Especially if they have a large retirement account.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
relatively speaking, you can't have as great of an impact. Because you may have a female client who worked for 30 years. She's got $2 million in her retirement account, but she is limited by how much she can convert due to the single tax bracket. So it's
right. You're
not as
talking
impactful.
about the single tax bracket. You're also talking about IRMA brackets, right? IRMA brackets are what determine your Medicare costs, right? Is it worth us inflating our Medicare costs that much in order to convert money in a single tax bracket? Typically, the answer is no, but we're going to look at it every year for you, right? And who knows, maybe something changes in the tax law 2 or 3 years down the line, and that makes sense.
And,
right?
and real quick, Nicole, I'll let you hop in, but I can visualize what it is that you're saying. I want to just share that with everyone. So if you have a $2 million IRA, let's say, or $1 million IRA, because of the lower tax brackets, you can do less of a conversion. You may still very well go up to the 22 or the 24% bracket, but because that's so much less than a married couple that's filing jointly, the amount that you can convert would be about double if you're married. A lot of times the IRA, when you're modeling out, it's going to grow. So all those dollars you just converted and now they're tax-free. Yes, that's beneficial. Yes, that's helpful. But what you're saying is it's not solving the bigger problem because the IRA is still growing over time. And you still have this massive RMD problem down the road. Mm-hmm. You still have IRMA problems down the road because now those RMDs are putting you into a bigger tax bracket. So the limiting factor is those tax brackets in the single, it's a single filer, and it's just not as impactful to the grand scheme of things.
If you're charitable, right, then I actually encourage people, again, don't do Roth conversions if you're charitable to some extent, because once you're 70 and a half, you can give money straight from an IRA straight to that charity. You don't pay the taxes. The charity doesn't pay the taxes. And also, neither do your beneficiaries. So it's another tax efficient way to pass on more assets to your kids. If you have other after-tax dollars, rather than giving charity from there, you'd want to give it from the IRA. You're saving tax dollars, bringing down those required minimum distributions. 2 birds, 1 stone. I mean, there's so many different things you can do. Roth conversion is not the be-all, end-all. There's definitely other strategies and stuff we can put into place.
Yeah, and also a couple other ones real quick. So if you're already in required minimum distribution age, it may not make sense to you, except for the fact that you want to pass on a lot of tax-free money to your children, but there still may be better ways to do that. And then if you have very large sources of income from other places, it may put you into a tax bracket already that it's cost prohibitive for you to do the the Roth conversion and still be mathematically advantageous. But I go back to this concept of utility because not everything, there's something that we look at that we so eloquently call the composition of your accounts, right? So when you have all your money in IRAs, the composition is all tax infested, right? You have to pull money out, either you, your spouse, or your children. Someone's paying taxes. So you can either do that today when you have a really good opportunity with the tax rates and brackets, or you can kick the can down the road, take on more tax risk into an era where you don't know what those rates and brackets will be. So you have to make these decisions. And when you have the ability, even though mathematically it may be a break-even proposition, if you can improve the composition of your accounts to where now you have some Roth, some tax-free, some still tax-infested, but you've improved the composition, therefore you've improved your flexibility when it comes to where you can take money from later, and also when passing that money on, your children, they have some benefits because that makes sense for them.
It's about options.
It's options, flexibility. Okay, so we have our raffle winner for the second raffle tonight. And apologies, Stephanie, if I do not pronounce this correctly, but Stephanie Sandias? Sandias.
Oh, that's not my Stephanie.
So Stephanie Sandias. So again, apologies if I've mispronounced that last name. But congratulations. Our marketing team will reach out to you to deliver the $100 gift card to your favorite restaurant. Thank you very much for tuning in. Okay, let's rapid fire some of these. So I don't need to buy long-term care because I'm never going to go into that facility and I'm just going to die.
Yeah, I've had clients tell me, I'm going to Washington. That's my long-term care plan.
Washington?
Yeah, that's where Dr.
The state of
Kevorkian
Washington?
used to
Oh,
practice.
the state of Washington.
Yes,
Yeah.
so back in the day. Again, wow, I'm showing my age tonight. But yeah, so that's mostly the joke. But really, 50%, you have a 50% chance basically of needing long-term care. And would you rather spend your own money or would you rather spend an insurance company's money? And then again, you're leaving more assets for your beneficiaries at that point. You're preserving your own assets in that situation. So it's all about what's your priority, what are your goals, what's important to you. And we help figure out what tool will solve it.
And what the myth that I like to bust is that you actually have control over whether you go to a long-term care facility or not. And that's what I've seen. I've sat with many people over the years and they say, Troy, I'd never go to one of those facilities. Well, then, guess what? They get a little bit older, they have a stroke, they have a heart attack, they fall down, they break a hip, something happens, and you have no choice. Now you're in a rehabilitation facility. Things don't get better immediately. You have to stay in there longer. My grandfather, you guys have heard me share this story. He had an aneurysm, 2 aortic aneurysms, suffered hypoxia during the surgery, 64 years old. Ended up being in a long-term care facility for 6 months, and then we did home health care for 2.5 years, $40,000 a month. So was a month.
Oh my gosh.
And trust me, my grandfather was the type of person where, if you asked him this long-term care question, he would say, Troy, I'd do it myself before I ever ended up in one of those facilities. So what does this mean for you? So I just want you also to understand, besides that it's not in your control, that there are solutions available that are either expense-driven, which we don't recommend, or asset-based driven. So at risk here of taking up more time, real quick, I think this is an important story I want to share with you. So I've done a radio show here in Houston for about 15 years now, a little more than 15 years. A long time ago, 12, 13 years, I had someone call in. He said, Troy, I'm going to come see you. I don't think you can help me, but I want to come see you. He comes in and he slides this piece of paper across the desk and he says, Troy, I want you to read that. I said, yes, sir. It says, Dear sir, we're writing to inform you that your long-term care premiums are going up 100%. And he said, Troy, that's the third year in a row I've received this notice. So he was 87 years old. And if he kept the policy in force, the long-term care policy, he would have to write a check for $30,000. If he got sick and needed the coverage, they would pay him $36,000. So he says, obviously, I'm not going to pay it. Can you help me? I said, no, sir, there's nothing I can do. So ever since that day, we've never recommended traditional expense-based long-term care coverage for our clients. But if you have some wealth accumulated, there's asset-based strategies that may be of interest to you if long-term care is important. So the quick summary here is if you don't need long-term care, if you don't use it, you don't lose it, right? That money plus typically an enhanced amount will go to your family if you never need long-term care. If you just simply want your money back, you can take your money back. So it's not an expense, it's an asset. It goes on the balance sheet of your ledger. And then whatever you put in, it will balloon into a larger amount if you need long-term care coverage. So typically this is a $50,000, $100,000, maybe $200,000 asset transfer. But again, it's not an expense. It's an asset that is on your balance sheet. And if you don't need long-term care, it turns into a larger amount. If you need to borrow money, take some of it back, you can. And of course, if you need long-term care, that asset balloons into a much larger amount to help you pay for your long-term care. So I guess two things there. One, the myth is everyone should have long-term care insurance, which I disagree with because a lot of people can self-insure. A lot of people have family that can take care of them, but there may be a situation where you end up in a home. If you go that route, I would consider asset-based long-term care over expense-driven long-term care. And the second myth to bust there is that you actually have a choice. Because firsthand from my family, many of you have gone through this as well. You don't have a choice. You know, you have a choice. You know, you make plans and God laughs. So
Right. Yeah, ask the people suffering from Alzheimer's if they chose that,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
They may end up in a memory care facility.
Yep. So long thing there, but I think that was very fitting for this live stream and that myth. So
Can I just add one thing,
yes,
Troy?
please.
The really nice thing about some of these alternative long-term care options or investments that we have that are asset-based, they don't just cover, you know, if you were to go into a home, they actually cover a lot of expenses to keep you in your own home, right? To keep you in your house, which typically tends to be a lot of people's goals, right?
Yep.
They want to stay
It's
in
the
their home
preference.
It's everyone's.
as long as they can. And so that's just something not only that I really appreciate about some of the newer assets and tools we have in order to create long-term care planning for folks is that it's not just restrictive. You have to be, you know, in a home. Typically there's a waiting period. Now it's, you know, these will actually pay for services to come in your own home, which is typically a lot of people's comfort zone.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't understand this until they actually try to make a claim on their long-term care insurance policy. So you have two different types. So you have a reimbursement structure and you have an indemnity structure when it comes to different types of long-term care policies out there. Indemnity means they pay you first, and then you can use those dollars however you choose. If it's in a facility or at home or however you
Vegas.
choose. The reimbursement typically is going to be a facility only. You have to pay out of pocket, and then they will reimburse you for specific outlined coverages inside that policy. So very important distinction there. Reimbursement isn't necessarily bad. It's just
More of a hassle.
understand the structure and what you're actually getting into.
Yep.
Okay, so I wanted to rapid fire a few of these here. So expenses always go down in retirement.
I steer clear from the words always and never. Every plan is different. So it's just, we can look at trends and we can read studies, but everybody's plan is going to be different. Like you just said, unexpected stuff comes up. We got to prepare to pivot.
Yeah, typically we see, I think this is probably generalization, but most folks have a little bit more expense in the first couple of years of retirement, right? 3 to 4. We're traveling, making an RV purchase, maybe upgrading our home to be more comfortable since we're
Paying off
spending
mortgages.
Yeah, spending more time at home.
Just kidding.
You know, I actually have a lot of clients who, you know, have kids that are getting married, right? Want to pay for a wedding, for that type of thing, or, you know, subsidizing some of the housing costs for graduate school, for example, for those kiddos. So I would say it's more than not, we see those expenses be actually a little bit higher in those first couple years, just because people are getting into the rhythm of retirement. And also, you know, they're just still young, traveling, upgrading, still have kids that need some assistance as well.
Yeah, I mean, a common one is you need 70 or 80% of your pre-retirement income to live off of, you know, and part of that takes into consideration if your income was $100,000, you were putting money into the 401k, so you're only living on, let's say, you know, 80% of it. But most, we look at it from a spending standpoint because it can get confusing otherwise. If you're used to spending $100,000 a year or $60,000 a year, not many people I've ever met when they retire say, you know what, Troy, I want to spend about 20% less than I did last year.
It's my goal to not eat at a restaurant this year.
Now,
said by no one.
What will happen, though, is without a plan and without a level of comfort regarding how long their money will last, inadvertently we will see people spend 20, 30% less in retirement, but not because their expenses or their anything is less than it was the year prior. It's just simply they're afraid. There's uncertainty there. So spending less is their way of gaining a sense of control over the uncertain or the unknown of, do I have enough? How long will my money last?
Right. Yeah, I have a actually really interesting conversation with some clients this week. Actually, the husband works for a healthcare company, and I was kind of doing a pay stub analysis, trying to figure out, hey, where are they going to fall, in the tax bracket this year? And most folks know this, but if not, your gross income, what you get paid from your employer, there's what's called pre-tax deductions, right? So you get to back out certain expenses before they even hit where your income comes into on your tax return. So I was looking at his pay stub. I'm like, gosh, he's only paying $100 for healthcare for him and his wife per paycheck, $200 per month. And we're talking to him like, gosh, I just can't get over how cheap your healthcare is through your employer. And that was almost like a light bulb moment for us both. Like, gosh, you guys are going to spend so much more in retirement on healthcare. Basic Medicare, right, is going to raise their cost in that area simply because he works at a great company that's in the healthcare field and they can offer him really great employee benefits. But just little nuances like that, some people don't think about, oh gosh, maybe my Medicare will be more expensive than what I'm paying with my employer.
Yeah, especially if you have a good health plan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially if you retire early before Medicare. Enough said. All right.
Okay, so Lewis says HSA makes a good LTC option. So, God, now this is triggering something.
Is it triggering, or is it like triggering a memory?
It's triggering a memory because for some reason
Okay.
I could be wrong about this. I don't remember exactly, but maybe it's long-term care insurance premiums. I remember the health savings account. When you make distributions, it's a health savings account, so you put money in pre-tax, you get a deduction, it grows tax-free, and then you can take it out tax-free, all the growth. It's an amazing account. But for some reason, I'm remembering some type of limitation around either long-term care insurance premiums or long-term specific types of long-term care that are excluded from HSA distributions. I think it may have been the insurance premiums, though. I don't know, but just you learn these things over the years, and then some things stick, and then you don't quite remember them all.
Yeah.
But it was something I would look up. So
rules you don't use every day.
yeah.
You don't remember.
But yeah, no.
You may be thinking COBRA premiums you can cover under HSA, but not Medicare premiums.
Maybe that's what it is. So
An
COBRA,
ACA.
okay. So it's COBRA premiums, but not Medicare premiums, not normal health insurance premiums, and then maybe long-term care insurance premiums are. I don't know.
We'll follow up with you on that one.
Well, it's just I'm just talking out loud, really.
Yeah.
But because I have some nugget in my head, I'm bringing it out. So if that's your plan, that you take the time to actually look it up, unless you're a client of ours, and then we'll look it up for you.
Then Lizzie will do it. That's something we make Tavis
Gosh,
do.
What did you just say a minute ago? Oh, no. So HSA distributions may not, now I have a second thought here, may not be the best for your long-term care needs because long-term care expenses are typically very high. So you can use your qualified dollars, your retirement account dollars, if they exceed, I believe it's 7.5% of adjusted gross income. So this actually, Lewis, may be a good opportunity to use qualified dollars, your retirement account dollars, because if those expenses are high and your adjusted gross income, let's say, is $70,000 a year. Well, once you exceed that 7.5% threshold, all those other medical expenses, the ones that you can attribute, and the long-term care facility will give you a breakdown of what's service-oriented, what's medical-related. You can use your IRA dollars for those expenses. Save that HSA for yourself or maybe your spouse or something like that. So
it's another good reason why we don't always convert every dollar out of your IRA.
Yep.
It's another.
Yep. Yep. So I'm glad you brought that up. That's an interesting planning point. So, but that's part of why we go through the education, why we have the training. We're not going to remember every single thing in the world, but we remember enough to get us going in the right
crazy,
direction.
like you wouldn't believe.
Actually, we don't even do planning. We just use ChatGPT. So,
Oh no, let's not get into this.
No.
No, that's a really great thing about Oak Harvest, though, is I bet if Ed Rossi was here, another advisor on our team, he would know the answer.
Yeah.
Ed, if you're here, type it in.
Yeah.
But that's a really great point, Troy, about having a lot of really qualified financial planners here. Is Nicole and I sit back to back in our office, and I learn something new from her every day, and I learn something
Sometimes
new from,
it's true.
Yep. So whether I want to learn it or not, no, I'm just kidding. But that is one of the really great things about Oak Harvest is we just have so many qualified, passionate people here.
I love it. We'll just random question out loud. What's the COLA this year for Social Security? Someone will
Everyone's
answer
chiming in. Yep.
Okay, so guys, we're going to wrap this up now. We're at 7:20 here. So anything else, kind of final thoughts, or is there anything that we had on the list that I didn't go through or something that you wanted to cover? And while you guys do that, I'm going to look to see, make sure I didn't miss anything in the chat.
Well, I didn't read the list that closely. That's why Lizzie's giving me that look. So you tell us, is there anything on the list?
I don't think so. I think, there are lots of myths, rule of thumb in retirement, but I think the most important thing is meeting with a professional you feel comfortable with. That's a fiduciary and acts in your best interest. Not only on a firm level like Oak Harvest, but with a professional like Nicole and I, certified financial professional, that really does have your best interest at heart to create that individualized plan, to understand what are our goals, how can we fulfill those goals in a way that's not taking on additional risk and that's mitigating outside risks to your plan. I just see a lot of people try to create their own plan or their own investing, infidelity by themselves. It adds stress. You're not a perfect person. Having that outside looking in on and identifying what risks are unique to you is very, very important into your success.
And you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly.
So that's another reason it's important to talk to a professional and get their opinion and see what different strategies might work for you.
Yep. So we have, just want to say hello to Mike real quick. So Mike jumped in. Fast Eddie said, let the kids pay the taxes. I gave him a free ride already as is.
Is that my dad?
Yeah, possibly. And then, so apparently, William Bengen, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but the original creator of the 4% rule, some 35 years ago.
Oh, I was going to say, he commented?
No. But someone said that he has a new study out recommending 4.7%. So again, another rule of thumb for 4.7% would be a lot if you just did that on a consistent basis, moving throughout retirement with no change. But here's the thing the difference between academics and real world planners. No one is just going to take 4.7% out every single year. So
to the penny.
It's a good practice in academic study, but in the real world, we deal with clients that have fear and anxiety and uncertainty about the future, and they have maybe they put a big emphasis on having enough money for medical expenses later in life. So all of these little personal things that impact the psychology of your retirement, as well as your specific planning needs and goals, all of that works into what your particular withdrawal rate is. And typically it's going to make more sense for most of you to look at these withdrawal rates as more dynamic. Not just dynamic in regards to the go, slow go, no go phase and whatever expenses you may need later in life, but dynamic in regards to how is your portfolio performing, how aggressive are you invested, and being able to or have a willingness to adjust on the fly when things don't go the way that they were planned. All of these factors work into what your withdrawal rate should be. So from an academic study, I'm sure he's got tons of great data behind it. And I can see how it works out, especially given today's a little bit higher interest rate environment, which is actually similar to the environment when we first did the study. Point being is there are statistics. How does it go? There are lies, damn lies, and then there are statistics, right? So we can make any, from a mathematical standpoint, we can typically make anything say anything that we want. So I'm sure it's got a lot of good data, a lot of good points there. In the real world, though, it's not quite how it works. So, yeah.
Yeah, difference between working with a fiduciary and working with someone that's trying to sell you a newsletter, right? That you want to work with someone that has your best interest in mind, using your actual data, not just academic information, academic data. So.
Okay, so we are back next month. We have an investment live stream upcoming, and Chris Paris will be here. Charles will be here. I believe we are going to be discussing the fourth quarter of 2025, what some of the expectations are, where the markets could potentially go. I'm actually have not been told this yet, so I might just be making that up. Do you guys know if we have that's typically what we'll do. We'll alternate the planning ones and the investment ones. I don't know if you guys know that we have a planning one upcoming.
Sounds correct to me.
I don't.
Yeah. So actually, I'll take that back. I think we're going to be here with Chris and Charles, but we may be back here with the planners. Either way, we thank you very, very much for tuning in. As always, if you're a client, it means a ton to us. We really, really appreciate you and care about you. If you're not a client and you'd like some conversation or discussion around your retirement, always reach out to us. And we look forward to seeing you next month. Thank you very much.
Take care.